So I learned that to really build something with credibility, with long lasting, and build wealth in general, it's a 5, 10 year, 20 year, 30 year game. So automatically, when we was building his business, yes, sometimes I'll disappear because I'm not making money. But what Dan did was really help me understand what a real business takes to build and what it should look like in terms of having, longevity, systems and operations, and not thinking as a one-man band. So there's so many lessons I've learned from building what we say of proper business, and not just like a side hustle where I'm making money there and the next week there's no money. So that's one of the key lessons I've learned, to basically shift my mindset to think 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, legacy building, wealth building, and not to think like today or tomorrow or next week, if that makes sense.
Hey, welcome to the Wealth and Business Podcast. I'm so super excited on this one as I'm joined by my business partner, my friend and my brother, my very first student turned business partner. It gives me so much joy to have this amazing individual who has partnered with me, because without him, I basically would have not have been able to achieve the level of success that we've had on our marketing and our sales, and above all on social media. Over the last 4 years, this amazing individual, I've watched him grow, same way he's also watched me grow. And we just wanted to have a chat and to kind of, as we celebrate our 2 years anniversary of the Wealth and Business Podcast, and as well as celebrate the 3 years we have continued to impact so many other people in the wealth and property creation world. It just gave me so much appreciation to have this person here whilst we share the journey again. So without further ado, I want to welcome my brother, my friend, my business partner, the guy who's always behind the scenes here at Property Wealth, Mr. Kevin Kludje. Wow, Kevin, we're here.
My man.
So for those who don't really see you in most of the content, just remind everyone else, obviously, when we did the first episode, 2 years ago, can you imagine, how did this all begin with us? First of all, and who are you and what do you do for the Property Wealth brand?
So who am I? For those who don't know, my name's Kevin. I'm the co-founder at Property Wealth Corporation here. I handle all the sales, the marketing, Dr.Daniel, the social media, basically all the back end to do with the business. However, I didn't start there. If we go way back, I met my business partner now, Dr.Daniel, about 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it all initially started by me getting started in property and doing loads of mistakes and getting myself, well, I like to say, into a lot of trouble. So it's so good getting yourself started in property, but make sure, you get the right education, which, I never did until, my business partner here showed me the right way of doing so. And then from there, we kind of had the same alignment, same vision. And then we said, you know what, why don't we teach other people, what you've taught me? And then our journey started from there. We've never looked back. And in terms of the podcast now, so we're 2 years in within this Wealth and Business Podcast, and it's only my second episode. So you guys are going to see me a little bit more. But you know what? When we first started, as you know, I wasn't really positive about us starting the podcast because we were just starting the business. And I was telling Dan, let's forget about that. Let's focus on building the business, doing the sales, doing the marketing, the podcast.
Let's focus on the money, basically.
Let's focus on the money. Like, the podcast's not really going to do much or whatnot. But then you said, no, listen, the way people get to know us and buy into us, X, Y, Z, is by, connecting with people and having great conversations with them. So looking back now with the podcast, I believe we're on like our 50th or 60th episode now. And it's just, growing and growing and growing. We've had some amazing guests from America, all around the world. And, it's been fantastic. And I'm looking forward to having, many, many more years on the podcast that we're currently doing.
Yeah. There's a few points that you mentioned there. And you said when we started Property Wealth Education and a year later, we launched the Wealth and Business Podcast. And basically, I remember this, you were very against it. And you said, Dan, let's basically focus on the property. Let's focus on the education arm of the business. We don't literally need to just give the way we wanted to just give.
Yeah.
And let's just focus on just driving the money through. And something about me, I've always said to a lot of people, for me, it's a legacy. So, because the real wealth is built through legacies, not I've always said it. Yeah, I love to make money. I want to make money today, tomorrow. But I love to create wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, coming from the background that you were coming from as an entrepreneur, before obviously a lot of things has changed a lot.
Mm.
You know, entrepreneurs always focus on the money and the money today. Let's make the money today. But for me, I wanted to do all the things that are correct. Number one, to be known. Number two, to be seen. Number three, to have a relatable audience. And finally, number four was to use the value that we produce on this podcast to make a massive, massive impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And looking back 2 years on, you know, we've never stopped. First, it started with one episode a week. So one episode a month. Then it changed to 2 episodes a month. And now our new year 2023 has been 4 episodes a month. So which means there is one episode coming out at 6 a.m. every single Tuesday of every single week.
Yeah.
So looking back, what lessons have you learned from the fact that you didn't want it as a business partner,
Yeah.
but I said no, we're gonna do it? What sort of things did you learn from that?
Well,
Because in partnership, right? In partnership,
Yeah.
this is where people can start to have headlocks and say, "No, you want to take the lead. I don't. What am I doing here?" But what did you learn from that?
Definitely. I mean, there's so many lessons that I've learned from obviously working with yourself for the last couple of years. If I was to bring it back a little bit, as an entrepreneur, the first thing I wanted to do was obviously make money, and therefore my focus was on how can I get rich very quickly. And therefore, as you know, I was running around doing different types of businesses. Sometimes I'll come work with you and then I'll disappear for 6 months and then come back. And then one thing you said to me, which stuck with me, is that this game, right, you got to think long term. And that was my problem. I wasn't thinking long term. I was thinking of, I need to make money now. I need to make money today. So working with you, number one, because you've had business experience before, successful businesses, which obviously fell apart and then rebuilt again. So I learned that to really build something with credibility, with long lasting, and build wealth in general, it's a 5, 10 year, 20 year, 30 year game. So automatically, you know, when we was building this business, yes, sometimes I'll disappear and whatnot because I'm like, I'm not making money. But what Dan did was really help me understand what a business, a real business takes to build and what it should look like. In terms of having, you know, longevity, systems and operations, and not thinking as a one-man band. So there's so many lessons I've learned from building what we say of proper business, and not just like a side hustle where I'm making money there and the next week there's no money. So that's one of the key lessons I've learned, to basically shift my mindset to think 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, legacy building, wealth building, and not to think like today or tomorrow or next week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like how you kind of really touch base on that, because I think a lot of people have misconstrued a side hustle for entrepreneurship. You know, a lot of people are basically building a side hustle business, or rather, actually not even a business, a side hustle. And they're calling the side hustle an entrepreneurship. And as well as they referring to side hustle as a business. In order to really build a business, first of all, you got to start, you got to grow, and then you then scale. And once you scale, you then thrive. So it takes a lot of steps, you know, to build a business. So a lot of times, often people say, what do you do? I'm a business entrepreneur. Okay, what do you do as a business entrepreneur? I have my own, you know, podcast studio, for example. Or for example, I am a social media content creator. That's entrepreneurship. No. As long as it still lies within just you as one man band, it's not a business. It's not sustainable. So which means take you out of the business tomorrow, the business dies.
Done.
So you learning the fact that I was more driven toward wealth creation and building something for 5, 10, 20 years, something that will live after I die. You know, God willing, I live very long. My mother is still 80. My mother is 86 years old.
Yeah.
So 86 years later, or 90 years later when I died, 90, people can still go back and refer to my name, refer to everything that I achieved. That is legacy. My wife and my kids, my entire units, basically, and those who are surrounded by myself, still live of what I've created. And that is empire building.
That's it.
So you learned that longevity from it.
Yeah.
Now, for you as a person, for the people who are listening to this, how or what words would you kind of give to people for yourself that you learn for yourself that people start to think not short term but long term, especially for those who are even in property, because a lot of people come to us to teach them property, right?
Yeah.
And they always ask, how can I make the next money? I say, okay, it's not about how you can make the money today, but it's how can you make this money and keep making the same money for the next 18 months, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. So what have you learned for yourself?
Definitely. So, you mentioned a few things there. For me, is understanding that you have to do, you have to be super, super consistent at doing the same thing for a very, very, very long time. And eventually that one thing that you're doing for a very, very long time, will explode or will blow up. So I was telling you the other day, Dan, for the last 2.5 years, we never had a Saturday off. Every Saturday at 10 a.m., we have our property online masterclass. And we look back and we said, like, wow, we could have stopped. There's times where we had, 2 people showing up, sometimes 100 people, sometimes 300 people. And we're like, just because we've been consistent with it, number one, people are seeing with it. They're seeing it that, we're serious about it. And, now it's producing, let's say it's fruits. We've been reaping, and now we're slowly still reaping. Now we've been sowing, but now we're slowly reaping, but still sowing, if that makes sense. So one thing I'd say is, think long term, longevity. I'm now in a position where I'm not just thinking about myself. I don't have any kids yet, but I'm already thinking about, okay, how can I position myself so when I do have kids, I'm already, at a good foundation level. One thing about me, which I'm grateful for, is as an individual throughout my life, I've always been around people way older than me. For example, I see you as my business partner, my uncle, my friend as well. And majority of my circle now are people who have got kids, married, and I'm just always picking their brain, picking their wisdom. And I think what that's done for me is, transition my mindset to just, not think just about myself, but think long term and think about, okay, where do I see myself in 10, 20 years? Because one thing I've noticed is that time never stops. It keeps going.
Yeah.
You can't go back. You can only go forward and focus on what you can do in the present. But what you do in the present, you can kind of like, work towards bettering your future, if that makes sense. So I've had that total mindset shift now. And I think that's the advice I'll give to anyone that's an entrepreneur or looking to build wealth, is to think very long term.
Yeah.
And be consistent with it. It might get boring. It will get boring. It might get stressful and you might not work, but just keep doing the same thing that you're doing. And then eventually, trust me, like it'll work. Definitely.
I agree. Everything you've just said right there. There's a quote I really love by 50 Cent. So yeah, not 50 Cent. Rick Ross. Rick Ross says,
Yeah,
"I don't want to move very fast,
Yeah.
but I want to move very correctly."
Correctly. Yeah.
And for me, even though I never heard that quote until just about a year ago, for me, my life has always been driven as, yes, I don't want to move very fast all the time, but I want to move very correctly all the time. Although every single time I've now moved correctly, but there is a speed in it.
Yeah.
It's always for me being what you don't know and what I can learn, and I can learn and I can learn, because I realize that everything we've ever wanted, all right, in front of us is the ability to think long term, because sometimes what you're looking for is not really far away from you. It's literally right there sitting in front of your face and watching you say, grab me, take me, use me. But sometimes, because every one of us wants to move very fast, we end up running all over the place and realizing wherever we're running for was actually right there in your face. And these principles that I live by continue to impact my life, I mean, we have every reason not to basically run property wealth education today. We have every reason not to even have the wealth and business podcast today. We have every reason not to be even known today. But because I believe in the vision and I basically sold that vision to you, and I've sold it to every single member of the team to think long term. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, but only the last literally 6 to 7 years, I can basically look back and say, you know what? For the very first time in my life, at the age of 43, I'm going to be 43 next week. And I realized that actually, wow, it is consistency that brings greatness.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I love about the great book written by Darren, and it's called The Compounding Effect.
Mm.
If you do one thing that is correct, all right, over and over and over and over and over again, you're going to reap the reward.
Yeah.
If you do the same thing that is wrong, and you're going to over the year do it over and over again, you're going to reap the wrong reward.
Mm.
So great thoughts compounds to greatness. Bad thoughts compound to, or bad, routine, and all of these things lead to, something absolutely not working.
Definitely.
So having said that, Kevin, you as a marketing director and as a sales director here, obviously at the moment, still quite a small team of 10 people we have here at Property Wealth, including all our production team and everyone else. What made you even think in the first place to partner and to join me, to build this business? Because you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, you are an entrepreneur. And then now you're no longer, going in that right of being an entrepreneur, but you have become an entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur is someone who goes out there to take all the risk, build a business and everything else, probably start themselves and not, and just take all the risk for their business. But an entrepreneur is someone who has the great values that you have, but then supports someone else that's got the vision, the hunger as an entrepreneur, and support that entrepreneur to grow. So what made you change? What made you, decide to say, okay, let me not be an entrepreneur. Let me go entrepreneur, because I see where Dr. Daniel, I wasn't a doctor, at that time.
You wasn't.
Basically become an entrepreneur to support this vision, to scale, to grow, to take this globally.
Yeah, so you mentioned a few things there. For me, it became more of a personal thing for me. So, for example, I see, from the skill sets that I've learned, I'm able to help any individual, any business, or anyone who's got some sort of, vision that they're super passionate about, for me to come in and assist them, and then me also benefit from. So the way I've looked at myself as an entrepreneur or a business guy is, how much can I leverage from somebody else's, hard work or ideas, and how can I come in and assist that and be partners with them? Does that make sense? So same with how can I give an example? So same with property, the way I'm building my property portfolio now, I don't talk too much about it, but it's more, okay, how can I build on, someone else's, how do I say it, platform, but me adding massive value where it then becomes a partnership and becomes a win-win. The thing I've noticed is that, especially within our community or just people in general, we've got a lot of ego and pride, and everyone wants to be the number one guy. Does that make sense? The one at the top, the one that's most spoken about, and therefore that can cause a lot of clashes. With me, I'm a simple guy, simple person. I always see, okay, how can I bring value to this person with my skill set? And in exchange, how can we partner up so that we make it a win-win and it's fair on the long term for the both of us, if that makes sense. So I'm always looking how can I come in, assist, and build partnerships, build leverage. I think there was a saying on social media, I don't know, it was Warren Buffett or something like that. He said he'll rather own, I think, 1% of the 100 people's efforts than 100% own something of like one thing, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So with that mentality is, how I'm thinking in terms of, partnering up and, building businesses with people, obviously ourselves, what we've got going on. And it only makes sense. The work ethic that I see with Dan is second to none. Like, one thing I've learned from you is this guy works absolutely crazy. So if I'm going to partner up with someone like that he, regardless if I'm involved or not, he's going where he's going. Does that make sense? And I know he's going to get there because he's passionate. Like, God's on our side as well. God's on his side. So it makes sense for me to be like, you know what? Let me support this vision, which I also believe in, because it's about building people, building wealth, and especially within our community, it's about making an impact and change for what we're doing. So, it's a no-brainer for me to partner up, give my skill set, my value to make this vision align, because it's not just your vision. It's a vision that, it is for everybody, because we're building it, for everyone to kind of come in and really do well for themselves. And that's a no-brainer. For me personally, one of my passion is, not my passion, I think my purpose, I'm not too sure, but I think my purpose is to help people achieve their purposes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And from there, as an individual, I've always noticed that I'm a helper. Okay, what problems you got? I'm a solution, problem solver. So I'm like, okay, I can see things and be like, okay, we can do that, we can do that. And this is how I believe in helping people and partnering up with people, and that's why obviously I decided to partner up with you a couple of years ago. Because number one, you helped me when you didn't need to help me. I see the vision clearly. I see what we're trying to do, and it's not just for us; it's for the masses out there. So it'll be something great to be part of, and it's legacy building that you mentioned, and it's wealth. We all want wealth.
You said something there. You said it's not about just us; it's about other people.
Yeah,
But I always say this, right? A sinking man cannot help another sinking
sinking
man.
man. Yeah,
So
yeah.
if someone is drowning and you can't swim, if you jump into that sea and try to save someone else and you can't swim, you're gonna drown with that person.
Mm,
So I think one of our biggest work in the last 5 years. I've been in property myself over the last 5 years actively. That's when I started. But however, the whole journey getting myself educated started 7 years ago
yeah,
in
yeah,
2016. And over the last 4 years, you've been part of the 6 year journey. I remember before I actually got you in, a few other people, I was also mentoring at that time, at the same time, I was also mentoring you, were offered the same position.
mm,
Where I was like, okay, I think you got this skill, come and help me do this. Even when you came through as well, there were others who basically we said, all right, we'll give you 5% share, sweat equity in this organization, own it. And a few of them actually looked at me and said, we don't think you're going to
you're
make
gonna.
it.
I
We
remember.
haven't
Yeah,
even made it now, to be honest, but
no, no,
I don't think we're at the bottom. I don't
no.
think we are at the bottom. I think if you were to mention property wealth, again, being, black, I would probably say we're one of the fastest, although we have been recognized for that as being one of the fastest black, wealth creation company.
Mm,
I mean, Wealth and Business Networking event, which is associated with this podcast,
yeah,
has been named the, UK's most anticipated black wealth creation network.
yeah, yeah.
So going backwards and just basically looking at what I've just said here, would you say that you have made the right choices after I basically mentored you? Like you said, I didn't need to, and I did, and still here, and we have paid so much sacrifice to
Mm,
build a brand, so much sacrifice to keep investing in the business. You know, People are probably watching this podcast now thinking, oh, it's cost nothing to produce. No, it costs a lot of money to produce.
yeah, yeah.
And people see us on social media, we post over 3-4 times a day, and people are thinking I'm the one doing it. No, I'm not. It takes a lot of
Work behind
effort,
the
work
scenes. Yeah.
behind it. So would you say you have actually made the right choices over the last couple of years
Mm.
to not reward ourselves at the moment, but actually reward the brand, reward the business to get to where we're going?
Yeah, definitely. I do think I made the right decision, and just from the knowledge and the skills that I've acquired throughout this journey, is a skill set that can't be taken away from me. And it's a skill set that I could take anywhere and build different things, help people different ways. So it's definitely a great decision that I made. We had to learn from being like entrepreneurs or hustlers to now business owners, having systems, operations, marketing, sales department, admin, HR. So all these skill set I wouldn't have been able to have learned if I just had a normal standard job, or I would have learned, by me doing way more mistakes and, taking the L's from learning from those mistakes. But we've done those mistakes together, and from your experience in business, I've been able to quickly learn, how to have a proper business. So definitely right decision. The skill sets that I've learned, and working with what we was a startup or still kind of a startup, you won't get those skill set or those type of values anywhere else. So for me, it's about learning, educating myself, improving myself to be a better person, a better business owner, a better leader for my team as well. So these are skill set that I would have not learned, without if I didn't make this decision in terms of, starting a business and being business partners with yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Now, I want to take you back a little bit because I spoke
Yeah.
about the entrepreneurship and I talk about entrepreneurship. So you have had to sacrifice your entrepreneurial dream to become an entrepreneur. So the entrepreneur is the guy who takes the risk, and then the entrepreneur is the guy who supports the risk taker. So which is you in this business. And I always say this, and I think probably I don't say it enough. You know, like, yes, everybody see, the level of work that goes behind what I do, but sometimes you need a partner that truly understands you, because when times are hard, sometimes you're the only one that sees me cry. When things are frustrating out there, you're the only one that sees me frustrated, and you're the business partner that I literally get that basically, as like, I bring all the frustration to you, and you kind of help me say, Dan, no, look at where you are, look at where we were, look at where you're going, and you sort of help me, be the best version of myself. So I want to really thank you for that, Kevin.
That's cool.
You know, so in terms of you basically becoming the entrepreneur, the foundation, the guy who holds the foundation, whilst I'm just adding on top of the building. How does that, quitting your role as an entrepreneur and becoming an entrepreneur, that support system, you know, what has been your greatest, like three things that you learned from that, and what can be the three things that you want to give to those who are listening to this? Because not everyone think they're entrepreneurs, but actually most people are entrepreneurs and not entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I mean, it all starts with understanding what you're capable of and what type of risk you're willing to take and how much you're willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone. So obviously with me and Dan, we've got different skill sets, different, risks, risk potential or whatever we call it. And you just, as an individual, got to, figure out where within your organization can you best, place yourself or put yourself and still add massive value. So for me, I'm an entrepreneur in my own right, in my own department, within my team. So it's just about how you look at things. One thing I've noticed is that, how do I explain it? So in terms of like leadership and understanding your position, like I said, everybody wants to be the number one guy. There's nothing wrong with being the number two guy. Number two guy has got the same sort of responsibility, same sort of risk, and different types of leadership style as person number two. Does that make sense? So I'm happy to be number two in an organization, and there's different levels of, you're still a CEO, still a founder, but there's just different responsibilities that you have, and it just works hand to hand. So in terms of partnerships, you definitely want to make sure that you have similar skill set, but you're kind of opposite individual. So as you know, Dan's more of an extrovert, willing to put himself out there, willing to talk. I'm more like the chilled out guy behind the scenes, just getting the work done. So it's about understanding, how can you best, work with each other. And then from there, having your specific leadership role within that aspect, and then you doing your leadership role within that aspect that works best for you. And that's how our partnership has been able to work really great. We're not really clashing heads in terms of, we clash heads sometimes, but we understand each other's position and we mutually respect each other's position, and that's important as well. So we don't look at each other less than each other. We're the same position. However, Dan would, focus more on different things as a leader, and I'll focus more on different things as a leader. And that's what makes the partnership great. And that's how we've been able to, still be partners up to today.
Great. And just two things I want to touch on. A lot of people are mentors out there. And for me, having mentored you and then bring you in as a business partner and to say, Kevin, we own this together. Is there any lessons that you've learned from there, that you want to share with those who are listening, that they too probably could go and find someone who they can bring those values to, and those individuals can literally, okay, go out there and take the risk and give them a share of that? Is there anything you want to kind of share?
Yeah, I think that's a strategic partnership. For example, anybody out there that's, let's say you're a coach or your coach or a mentor, and you've got mentees who you see that they've got the abilities of, helping or assisting you in certain departments of your business, then, there's no they'll be, how do I say it? They'll be your biggest supporter because they understand you. You're mentoring them, and you can start building these different types of relationships where it just becomes compatible, and it just works. So yeah, I'll tell anybody, look at the people you've got around you that you're maybe mentoring or teaching, and see whether they've got certain skill set that you think they can add value to your business. And from there, what we did is equity stake and sweat equity, and then that's how the relationship has worked. So when it comes to working or setting up a business, sometimes it does require a team, where when you're first starting out, it might be difficult to find a team because it requires finances, which can be quite difficult. So it's just strategic partnerships that you can create out there to kind of benefit yourself as a business owner, and also for your mentee or your student to benefit from as well.
Great, great, great. So it's been absolute pleasure, Kevin, for having you as we celebrate the 2 years anniversary of this episode. And fingers crossed, now that the business is going where it is, and it continues to grow week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. The audience is growing as well. Working with me has not been easy,
No, of course not.
because I don't have to literally hide it. It's the truth. I'm a lion, and the lion always is you can't you have to be strong to work with the lion. I have that lion spirit. I'm an eagle. I fly through storms every day. you know, is there anything else that you probably want to share you've learned working with someone like myself who identifies with an ego? Because an ego will fly through the storm regardless of what the ego sees in the sky. That, oh, okay, it looks cloudy, it looks like it's about to be a storm, but he flies through that storm. And the lion mentality as well is the king of the jungle. So
Yeah.
regardless, he's fearless. He's not the biggest animal in the forest, deep, 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 deep in the forest, but the lion mentality is fearless.
Yeah.
There could be days where I could probably say, you could say, let's cancel this event, let's cancel this investment, let's cancel this, let's cancel that. And I said, still, let's go. And we basically went and we never regretted it. Is there anything that you want to share that you learned specifically as we come to the last part of this episode?
Yeah, so there's definitely two things which I think we both implement really well, and it's one of our core values here at Property Wealth Corporation, is that we will do whatever it takes, and having that mentality to ensure that we have the whatever it takes mindset helps us to figure out all the solutions that we can and make sure that we go out there and execute. There might be times where the finances aren't there and we've got to do this and do that, but we always figure out a way regardless. We never say we're cancelling it or we're not doing it. And then the other one is, which I totally forgot, so I actually forgot that one. What was I gonna say? Okay, that totally come out of my mind.
Okay.
It was a good one. So that's the first one. Whatever it takes. Actually, then the second one is, what's the other value we said? So the second value we said is, it's our fault. It's your fault. Does that make sense? Meaning that we take responsibility, and everything we like to say is our fault. This didn't go well. Okay, it's our fault. Client is not happy with this. Okay, it's our fault. And having that mentality always gets us to think, okay, how can we better it? How can we fix it? How can we make some adjustments? So we take a lot of responsibility on as a way to kind of like direct us and do better for the next time. So always thinking, number one, we're going to do whatever it takes, whether we have to work and not sleep for that day, we're going to do it. And the second option is, it's our fault. It's our fault the customer didn't buy. It's our fault the customer XYZ. It's our fault. And having that mentality just helps us to kind of like, work strategically and think deeply on how can we improve it and take responsibility to kind of like take the business to the next level. It's our fault. It's our fault. Yeah, it's our fault.
Yeah, I love that. I always say this: whatever happens is always our fault.
It's our fault.
It's nobody's fault. It's always our fault. I think one of the biggest part entrepreneurs out there, people always love to shift responsibility to someone else.
Yeah.
So it's your fault if it didn't work. It's your fault if the investor did not invest. If your fault if someone did not buy. It's our fault if someone is not listening to this episode. everything that we do is at fault.
Yeah.
It's always the reason why we keep growing every single day quite rapidly, how we're growing right now, because it's always like, why did we not get enough of that views? Why did a lot of people don't make an inquiry?
Yeah.
Everything is our fault.
It's just a mental shift. Yeah.
And that mental shift allows us to build a business. Wow, Kevin, it's been an amazing time to have you here at the Wealth and Business Podcast. So guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. As you know, we continue to impact lives. We continue to help people, build. We continue to help people identify opportunity, and we continue to help people to create generational wealth by completely helping entrepreneurs just like you who are watching right now, that it's time to actually completely destroy what you've been sold and what you've been told of the instant gratification mindset. That, okay, you can get started in property today and your life is going to be wealthy tomorrow. No, it takes time. Time is the only thing that builds you wealth. In anything that you want to do, you have to identify time. You have to have plan. You have to take enough action. And through taking enough action day in and day out, anyone can literally go and build a business. So I hope this episode has been able to impact you. So don't forget, we run a free property masterclass here at Property Wealth Education in partnership with the Wealth and Business Podcast. So for those of you who are interested in building your wealth, creating your wealth, there will be a link around somewhere on this episode where you can basically get yourself registered for one of our free property masterclass. And as well as, if you're not currently aware, that the Wealth and Business Podcast also have the Wealth and Business events, which is run every quarter of the year, somewhere around in Bromley. And recently we've been named, London's most anticipated wealth and, wealth, business and wealth networking event. So you want to get yourself the early bird ticket onto our next networking event, where we have super amazing speakers, those who have especially been on this podcast, where you can get to listen to them live in person, get to meet them in person, and get to obviously use their audience to build your brand. So meet and greet completely for free, being in just the room. So I hope this episode has really made an impact. Please make sure to share this podcast with a friend of a friend. Share this with your network to help us continue to improve our reach, to also help us to have more quality entrepreneurs who will come here to share their journey of the ordinary to the extraordinary. So I'll see you soon on the next episode. Remain blessed, stay focused. If I can do it, you can do it. I'll see you on the next episode. My name is Dr. Daniel Moses, and I'm out.